We are continuing our saga and series on the Indonesian independence, or more specifically, the War for Independence. Link to the original videos down in the description below. If you like the commentary and discussions we hear on my channel, consider subscribing. We also have a playlist down in the description of all my Indonesian videos, as well as this series and the Kingdom of Majapahit. So consider checking all those out. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Oh, if it starts.
Nuclear bombs level Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Japan surrenders to the Allies in August 1945. World War II is over. But the sudden end of Japanese hegemony leaves most of Southeast Asia in a power vacuum. The European powers hope to resume their colonial rule, but local people wish to rule themselves. This is the case in the Dutch East Indies, Indonesia. Things get violent. Welcome to the Indonesian War of Independence, a Time Ghost miniseries that follows that struggle year by year from 1945 to 1949. I'm Indy Nidell. Indonesia became a Dutch colony, the Dutch East Indies, through trade and brutal conquest. The racist and ultra-violent colonial system relied on fear and suppression. But
not only that, we also, not just fear and oppression, but also, creating a chaos. It's this idea of is it anarcho tyranny, where it's like you create so much chaos that they can never come at you for anything. And there were some things that we learned in the last video through the comments from you guys that I wonder if they're going to talk about in this video, but if not, I'll definitely bring up some of the things you guys mentioned in the comments of the last video.
But widely popular Indonesian nationalist movement was eventually launched. If you haven't seen our prologue, which covers it in more than one sentence, and you want to watch that first, the link is in the description. Anyhow, the Dutch forced the Indonesian nationalists into domestic exile, shutting down their movement in the 1930s. I left off just...
Which, by the way, the reason why, like in the first video, we kind of talk about it, but the reason why I'm going to mention it again is with nationalist movements, you can't just kill the leaders, because then it grows stronger through martyrism or martyrdom, right? It's like you can't kill a hero because then it'll only make more people believe in the hero, right? And so that's kind of why they chose to exile, which just shows how hyper aware the Dutch were when it comes to oppressing. They even understood that back then, and they knew what to do to oppress people. It's crazy.
Just before the Japanese invasion in early 1942. When the Dutch surrendered the colony, any actual respect that the Indonesians have for their former colonial overlords disappears. See, Dutch rule relied on a shock and awe strategy. And when the Dutch are defeated, many bureaucrats and other elite flee or are put in Japanese internment camps. Eventually, all European citizens are removed from society. As the Indonesians see their former bosses being locked up, degraded, or killed by fellow Asians, well, as Indonesian author Pramudia Anantatur recalls, the Japanese severely dent the glory of the white man's realm throughout the archipelago. See, if the Japanese can throw out the Europeans that easily, then maybe the Indonesians can rule themselves. And if it's up to the Japanese, that might one day be the case, it seems. Under their occupation, nationalism and anti-Western sentiments thrive at first. The Japanese present themselves as fellow Asian liberators. They permit the use of the Indonesian flag and the national anthem, both of which had been forbidden by the Dutch, although the Japanese would later ban them as well. Dutch influence is eradicated.
Were the Japanese like this for every person they invaded? I feel like they weren't. I feel like they were ultra violent no matter what. Or at least for most cases, I felt like when it came to some of these other Asian islands. But I guess the context was a little bit different. So it's kind of crazy that I didn't know that they were at least, again, they weren't overall, they weren't friendly, but they were friendly at first. I didn't know that they were. That's kind of crazy.
The Japanese depend on Indonesians to fill the empty administrative and technical positions, which further encourages national confidence. Though seen by some as collaboration, this policy is used by prominent nationalist figures Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta to relaunch their nationalist campaign. In 1942, Japanese commander Hitoshi Imamura asked Sukarno to mobilize support for the Japanese war effort. A mutually beneficial relationship unfolds, where the nationalists publicly support the occupation in exchange for political concessions and investments in national development.
Ooh, it's kind of tough. So essentially, well, I guess from their point, I guess as an out, like it makes sense, I guess, because you're try to play your hand the best way, but you got it's always one of those things where like it's very tough to predict with like nationalist movements. What makes nationalist movements so powerful, um, is this identity of self determination, right? Being able to do stuff because you are who you are. You're a human being. You have spirit. You have soul. You can accomplish things. And once you start surrendering some of that to colonial powers or to anybody, right? That's when you start, or like for example, communism, right? The opposite of that, you start losing power very fast. So I thought that was really interesting, but it does make sense for the context because if the people of the time really believe that you're cooperating, then that makes sense. But that does give me this question. If you don't know, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I ask a lot of questions because I want to know. Like I don't, I'm not I never claim to be a history expert, but as somebody who's learning. And when I ask questions, I always read your comments and love to learn from what you guys have to say. So this question I'm about to ask is probably one of the ones I definitely would love answered. In this video, it talks about how Indonesians so far believe in cooperation and stuff like that. But was there early red flags? Red flags meaning like, things that could have foreshadowed bad things happening. Like, was it was a lot of the movement actually bought into to working with the Japanese, or was it really just a small minority? Because I can understand if people felt misled. Like, I can understand that, but was it actually the people being misled, or was it just the leaders being misled? So, I think that's just some very important context. Um, because again, Indonesia is so diverse. Some groups cared, some groups didn't care, some groups cared like were the opposite. Like that's what I'm saying. So I just want to get like a better understanding where really the mindset was as a whole, not just the leaders.
Sukarno publicly recites translated Japanese text, adds his own bits and pieces, and signs off with a Japanese banzai. And the
Crazy.
crowds love it. And the Japanese think that their ideas of Pan-Asianism are gaining ground in the East Indies. And to a certain extent, that is true. Sukarno's ideals do have much in common with the Japanese. His speeches are filled with anti-Western and anti-imperialist rhetoric, but that same anti-imperialist rhetoric is also underhandedly aimed at the Japanese.
Smart. Okay, that's really smart. You're like, yeah, we hate the West. We hate imperialism. Anybody who's doing it. That's actually really cool, in my opinion. Wait, hello? Okay, did my OBS crash? That was weird. Um, but yeah, that's kind of cool that they were like able to really play it both sides on this. And I think that's one of the things that we're learning a lot by, at least I am, of the like just Indonesia and the populations of Indonesia and the history of Indonesia is thinking outside the box when it comes to problem solving rather than trying to just brute force your way out of a problem, which I think it's really cool.
Because despite framing their nation as the light of Asia, the Japanese too are an imperialist, racist occupier in need of cheap labor and natural resources. Their occupation is accompanied by many colonial atrocities committed against the Dutch and Chinese inhabitants, sure, but also against the Indonesians. The UN estimates that the total loss of life during the occupation is 4 million people, 2.4 of that because of famine in the final 2 years.
Oh my god. Is it so he's saying 4 million people died under the Japanese? What? And that's on top of what just happened with the Dutch? Oh my goodness.
Years of occupation. Furthermore, the Japanese forced roughly 10 million laborers to build things like the Burma-Thailand Railway under harsh conditions. A great many locals will die slaving away for yet another imperial occupier. But like a sort of double agent, Sukarno maintains a facade of compliance with the regime, though gaining independence for Indonesia remains at the heart of his actions. He and Hatta become the directors of the Putera, the Center for People's Power, through which Indonesians are allowed the administration of schools and teachers, student and sports organizations, and media associations. Trusted with more autonomy than ever permitted by the Dutch, the Indonesians relish the opportunity to represent and govern themselves, if only on a regional scale at first.
Oh, that's so smart. That is so smart. So essentially, okay, I see the strategy. That's really smart. So it's like, okay, yeah, we're colonized right now, but let's build our infrastructure that we would have never got any other way because the Dutch would just shut it down. But it's also smart, okay? Because like, here's the thing: when you just suddenly get independence and then you have to build all that stuff, it can get really out of crazy. You get foreign powers start interfering, blah blah blah. But it's actually kind of, it's like a weird like blessing in disguise that you're able to build the infrastructure while you have a colonial power protecting outside influence right now. Does that make sense? So then when you do achieve independence, it's already built up and then you just have to adjust it to where you want it. So I like, it's kind of, it's one of those things where like in the last video I was like, this kind of worked out really really well. Like it worked out better than I ever anticipated because of how everything just perfectly lined up. I This is kind of one of those things, you know, cuz there's a lot of countries or like countries that, you know, civilizations and societies that eventually became countries that like struggled with this part because as soon as they just became independent suddenly and they had no way of building all that properly, and so maybe some of these countries lost half their country or all this and vice versa. But it's actually kind of cool to see that there was, you know, oh, let's take what we can get and keep building, keep take what we can get and keep building. That's really really smart.
In the actual government, though, the Japanese eventually do put more power in Indonesian hands. In April 1945, they even give them some legislative power. Sukarno is appointed as head of the Investigating Committee for Preparatory Work for Independence, mainly an advisory body, but one tasked with making national regulations. In the nationalists' eyes, they're preparing the basis of a future Indonesian state. With confidence, Indonesia is manifesting and forging a national identity. Furthermore, the occupation aids the development of the country's infrastructure. Radio networks are expanded dramatically, and every city square has radio sets to receive official messages. Japan also trusts the Indonesians to set up their own military movement. The PETA, P-E-T-A, the Volunteer Army of Defenders of the Fatherland, is founded in 1943 to train Indonesians to defend the country against a possible Allied invasion. Troops are drilled with a strict regimen, precise military skill, and anti-Western sentiments.
So, okay, so let me understand. So, because this seems kind of weird that the Japanese started off this way, right? Because if they're truly a colonial power, you would think they would be more along the lines of Dutch. But I guess if they were so much more focused on cheap labor and just building a military force that's anti-Western, I guess that makes sense. Because if they were, it just seems like they're doing a lot of things that benefited Indonesians, but then killed a bunch of Indonesians. Like, maybe there's something in the middle that we haven't seen, or maybe throughout the videos we're going to learn a little bit more, but it just seems like two dramatic ends of a coin. Like, what was really their objective, I guess, outside of just governing and exploiting resources?
Sukarno persuades the Japanese to let them build this army based on a national spirit, troops of which he argues would be the most motivated and effective in resisting foreign invasion. The Putera and the PETA invigorate political and national consciousness among the civilian population. And loyalty to these organizations is fueled by a sense of nationalism and not any enthusiasm for a pan-Asian or Japanese cause. Now, once this becomes clear to the Japanese, the Putera is shut down.
Oh, okay. So is it entirely that the Japanese were just fooled this entire time? Let me know in the comments. Was because, like I said, it seemed very like I understand like if certain colonies want to like colonizers want to eventually bring their technology and improve somewhat the lives of the people they're colonizing. But this seemed like straight up they were just giving you everything for a little bit. Um and so that means that you guys were just straight up confusing them and tricking them, which is again a way to like think outside the box and get what you need is incredible that this is like consistent throughout your history. I think that's really really cool. Um I'm still baffled though by how much life the Japanese took. That's just yeah. It's kind of sad, but it's also like why what really why you know.
But then, on the 15th of August, 1945, the Japanese surrender and World War II comes to an end. Sukarno's opportunity to declare independence has arrived. Almost instantly, the Peta army and armed youth gangs called Pemuda pushed Sukarno to declare independence before anyone, the Japanese, the Dutch, or the Allies, can act. Sukarno hesitates, though, as he does not want to provoke the Japanese troops there, who assumed their role is to maintain order until the Allies take control. So,
Which is I think that's very smart. You don't want to hey, if anything, the troops you don't want to make them mad after they just lost. Um that's actually really smart.
the next day, in a stunning turn of events, a couple of restlessly eager Pemuda leaders actually kidnap Sukarno and pressure him into announcing Indonesia's independence. 10 a.m. on August 17th, Sukarno, with Muhammad Hatta beside him, declares the independence of the Republic of Indonesia in front of a huge crowd. The declaration reads that, "We, the people of Indonesia, hereby declare the independence of Indonesia. Matters which concern the transfer of power and other things will be executed by careful means and in the shortest possible time." His words are pretty non-threatening, speaking of a transfer of power rather than a coup or a revolution. The next day, Sukarno takes office as president with Hatta as vice president, and they get on with the business of writing a constitution. They seem to be in a good place, with their Japanese-trained troops at their disposal and the Dutch nowhere to be seen. There are around 66 army battalions, about 120,000 soldiers. The Heiho, the Indonesian auxiliary forces, amount to another 25,000 troops. Plus, there's a lightly armed Indonesian police force of 24,000. People press Sukarno to mobilize all these forces, but he urges everyone to remain cool and calm and maintain discipline. Thing is, although they haven't been legitimized or authorized by Sukarno, the revolutionary youth, Pemuda, continue to assemble in the streets. On September 19th, a huge crowd of 200,000 people.
So this is where like okay, now I'm a little conflicted. And you know what? Maybe this is not going to be like a question part of the video. I just want to hear what y'all have to think about this, right? Where you come in and like what you feel. Because the thing is it's like I actually think it's a good idea. You don't want to shake the hornet's nest when they're agitated, right? You don't want to shake it. But at the same time, you guys have been really getting like things have been lining up consistently throughout history that are just like so so out of the ordinary that it just keeps happening, like it's almost like it's fate, right? And so I'm kind of like on two hands, like it's smart to stay calm, play it smart, but at the same time, it's like if it's working and it just somehow keeps working, like we got to keep going with it, you know? Um, I don't know. Maybe I'll get more answers later in the video or other videos, but I just feel like this is probably the tricky part. I'm kind of torn on this as an outsider. Um, I guess it could go both ways, right? I guess it's one of those things, but I mean, I guess it worked out in the end, no matter what. But I think this is kind of tricky. But I do want to point this out before I don't point it out. Again, another example of the youth really stepping up, regardless of what earlier we were talking about the youth joining, whether it's the military, getting involved everywhere. So I think it's really cool. Again, another example of the youth being so pivotal in the history of this country, and even the local civilizations, or civilizations, but a little local cultures and societies. So I think that's a cool thing to remind everybody about, especially those who are watching that may not be from the region. Um, I think it's really cool to highlight how change can come from the youth, right? Like in the U.S., a lot of the change in the history of the U.S. came from older folk, but that shouldn't discourage you from being, wanting to make change in your local community. Because look, there's countries that were founded essentially on the youth. So I just think it's really cool and very inspiring to me.
Attend a Bermuda rally. Sukarno successfully diffuses the situation. Now, you may wonder why all these people are rallying and demonstrating. What's the big deal? They declared independence, right? Well, believe it or not, the Japanese stay in charge. Didn't see that coming, did you? Well, the terms of their surrender state that the Japanese are responsible for maintaining order. And even with ideas of national freedom blazing through the country, many Indonesians continue to respect the authority of the Japanese occupiers. 2 months after the Japanese surrender, they are still the main source of order in the country. The Japanese flag is flown outside of official buildings, and the Japanese military police still patrol the streets. And the Japanese actively battle Bermuda multiple times in central Java, killing thousands of Indonesians and taking hundreds of casualties themselves. And it's not just the Japanese occupiers who clash with Indonesian nationalists. The Dutch, slowly but steadily, are returning to their home.
So yeah, maybe it was a better idea to just wait. Um, I don't know, but then again, there's some things that's like something about adding pressure. Like, yes, it can spiral out of control, but I don't know. I'm still kind of torn. But this is obviously where it's. I think jumping the gun too early is kind of backfiring a little bit. But these darn Dutch are back.
As they are released from the Japanese internment camps. Not recognizing the Indonesian Republic's declaration of independence, they raise their Dutch flags. The Bermuda do not take this lightly, though, and more violence breaks out. By 1945, the Bermuda have over 25,000 members, and with Japanese weapons, they are a force with which to be reckoned. Brutal, racially motivated violence against Dutch, Chinese, British, and Japanese sweeps the islands, and Indonesians who are suspected of collaborating against the Indonesian nation are also targeted, again leading to the deaths of thousands in a period known as the Bersiap. In retaliation, Dutch Indonesians and Moluccans target local Indonesian communities with violence of their own. Though thorough research does not exist and sources differ on numbers, it is estimated that the Bersiap claims the lives of roughly 5,000 people.
Jeez.
Sukarno's hopes for a peaceful transition of power really vaporize as 1945 nears its end.
Well, spoiler alert, it didn't actually work out. I think this is one of those things where, for at least right there, right? I think this is a great example of the original plan of just staying cool and calm and collected and kind of taking it as you go. Could have avoided all this. Dang, 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 dang. That's so upsetting because it's like you're so close, yet you're so close. If you just stay calm, and then it just because all the temperature, the attitude, the temperature is a little high right now. People got a little hot, and the water boiled a little too much. People got a little excited, and then you throw it all away. That's that's tough. That's tough. That's tough. Obviously, you can never predict the future, but he was right.
Under the command of British Admiral Louis Mountbatten, in charge of overseeing the transfer of power in East Asia, as Supreme Allied Commander in Southeast Asia, the Allies intend to regain control of the Dutch East Indies. On the 21st of November, Mountbatten telegraphs the British Chiefs of Staff that, "I gave the Japanese the task of maintaining law and order pending the arrival of the Allied occupation forces. This they have failed to do. British forces are sent in to do the job, as the Dutch military is in a..."
Oh, brother, here comes the British too? All while Indonesians are trying to fight everybody? Oh, no. And then on top of the Dutch, on top of the Japanese being there, and then these Europeans who should, by the way, not be doing this because it's the opposite of why World War II was fought. They're just being greedy, so they know there's a cash. This is wealth to be gained. This is bad. This is real bad. It's a mess.
Shambles after the German occupation in Europe. Or, as Mountbatten puts it, no really adequate Dutch forces are yet in sight. Their internal security battalions are neither equipped nor trained for proper warfare. Thus, I do not see how the Dutch forces can take over from us within measurable time if their arrival will involve conflict with 100,000 armed Indonesians and the active hostility of most of the remaining 43 millions of inhabitants. On the 25th of October, the British land 6,000 troops in Surabaya to evacuate European citizens. Now, that city in East Java has been taken over by the Pemuda. And in addition to the now 100,000 strong Pemuda forces, 20,000 Japanese trained members of the Indonesian army, now reorganized into the People's Security Army, hold the city. Even though the British do technically capture Surabaya within 3 days, the Indonesians, supported by the local populace and having an overwhelming advantage in numbers, keep fighting them for weeks. In a bizarre twist, some Japanese units now even fight alongside the British against the Indonesian nationalists, while others support the Indonesians.
Wait, what? Wait, is it because... Okay, I'm surprised, first of all. That's crazy. But is it because, like, some Japanese, like, now have families there, kids, and they feel a sense of attachment that other Japanese maybe do not? Is that like the reasoning? But still, this is a mess. This is a absolute mess. Some of you, I'm gonna give y'all credit, called it in the last video that it's gonna get crazy. And I feel like this is only the beginning. This is such a mess right now. And the US hasn't even gotten involved yet. This is crazy.
In more dramatic events on October 30th, British Brigadier Malaby travels through the city under a white flag to propose a ceasefire. The accounts on what exactly happens are unclear, but Malaby is caught in a shootout and killed. The British are furious, and the Battle of Surabaya picks up speed. The fighting concludes at the end of November, leaving up to 15,000 Indonesians dead. If one thing is now clear, it is that Indonesian independence will not come easily. Towards the end of...
So literally, oh my God. Oh, almost fell. So you almost so close to getting independence in a more clever way, avoiding direct conflict, avoiding brute forcing your way and sacrificing a bunch of lives, to then it spiraling out of control and then the opposite happening. That's crazy. Oh my goodness. Oh, this is a movie. This is a movie. This should be a TV show.
1945, the Indonesians try to consolidate and organize. Sultan Syahrir becomes prime minister, and Sudirman is appointed the commander of the army. Historians will one day describe him as possessing cowboy irregularity and desperado quality. Dutch troops, upon their arrival, are faced with a different nation from the one they lost 3 years ago to the Japanese. The Japanese occupation nurtured anti-Western sentiments, but in doing so, embedded national spirit within the Indonesian people. Right now,
which is what you need no matter what. to gain independence, right? So, like, if you look at communism and nationalism, right? Communism will never really lead to real independence, right? Because the whole idea is that you're not valuable, you're just like everyone else. Whereas nationalism is you are valuable because you are who you are. Does that make sense? But so no matter what, the fact that that spirit was still able to nurture, I think still in the chaos is still a good thing. Like it's still kind of, it may not, all this other stuff is happening, but the fundamental most important piece to independence, which is nationalism, this idea of self-determination, right? Later on, probably democracy, right? You still need that belief. You need to believe in it at the end of the day. So, I mean, I still think it's still a good thing. That's still some positive thing has come out of it. So he's definitely right.
Dutch are totally unprepared to defend their colony from the Indonesian people's growing demands for freedom. But this is just the beginning. The Dutch will still try to re-establish their control over the Dutch East Indies, while the Indonesians will refuse to let go of lands for which they have paid in blood. From here on in, the Indonesian War of Independence will only get grittier, more violent, and ever more bitter. Tens of thousands will die in an attempt to reset the colonial clock.
And it's crazy to me as an American learning about this. It's like we fought World War II entirely to stop this colonial or not even just colonial things. It's just like expansionism. If you don't know what expansionism is the idea of like constantly expanding your border, conquering people. Like, for example, if we look at expansionism today, Russia is trying to occupy, they took Crimea, they're now trying to take Ukraine. China is doing land grabs in Africa right now, and they're probably going to take a move towards Taiwan and the Philippines soon. So those are some good examples of modern day. It just looks very different. But the thing is, it's like the entire, as an American, I know World War II. It's just so crazy but I didn't know this. It's like we know the history and everything that we fought for and why it was fought for, but then it's like the people we help protect from Germany and the Axis powers are straight up doing the thing that we tried to stop. It's so, to me, insane that we aren't even taught this more. I think Americans need to be taught this more because it's like, it actually makes sense why so often America gives benefit of the doubt to so many Europeans, but then they just end up backstabbing not just us, but like, for example, in the Indonesians. Right? Like they're yeah, they're backstabbing us, sure, but they're hurting the people that really were freed. That's anti-democracy. Like the whole notion of colonizing them is anti-democracy, which is what we were fighting for, really. It's just crazy to me that, and it was so blatant. It was just so out in the open about it. That's what's like, obviously we didn't really have the internet back then, but that is so crazy that it was just so out in the open. The Dutch were so greedy to go back. The British are so greedy to go get it. It's just, oh my goodness. It still baffles me every time. Like, and what a roller coaster. This whole saga is has me at the edge of my seat. And sometimes I have to catch my mouth being open because I'm just like in shock that this is the turn of events. I get it now. I get it. I'm learning. I'm being informed. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think about all this? Do you think it's gonna get grittier? Do you think I'm prepared for it? Should I just get a roller coaster seat and buckle up because it's gonna get crazier? Anyway, I love you guys. Be safe out there. Check out the next one. Bye-bye. This video is brought to you, actually, by viewers like you. Thank you so much for subscribing and being part of my journey and allowing me to be a part of yours. Let's create new memories this 2025 on our road to 1 million subscribers. And with all that jazz out of the way, I just want to say thank you so much. I love y'all and enjoy the video.